Hello and welcome to 2026 and welcome to Freedom Tech Friday. Freedom Tech Friday is a weekly live and interactive show hosted on the Ungovernable Misfits, X, Noster, YouTube, Rumble, and Twitch feeds. We go live for 1 hour every Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern or 2 p.m. UK time. And you can, of course, catch up later on the Ungovernable Misfits podcast feed. On Freedom Tech Friday, we like to cover the latest news and trends for anything relating to freedom technologies. That could be anything from Bitcoin, Monero, encrypted messengers, privacy tools, and everything in between. Essentially, if there's a news item, tool, or topic that can help you take back some control in today's digital panopticon, we want to talk about it. My name's Q&A. I'm head of customer experience at Foundation, where we build Bitcoin-focused sovereignty tools. As always, I am also joined by my good friends Max, the head honcho at the Ungovernable Misfits Empire, and Seth, who is now the COO at Cake Wallet. Freedom Tech Friday is a live and interactive show, and you can help steer the conversation by commenting live, pre-submitting your questions via socials, boosting the show via Podcasting 2.0, sending in your tips, or just sharing the show with your friends. Top support for our final show of 2025 with Keon Rodriguez comes from Late Stage Hoddle, who sent in 6,006 sats and just said #pardon samurai. We co-signed that message, of course. Thank you for your support, Late Stage Hoddle. We do have a guest that I'm going to bring in shortly, but without further ado, Max, Seth, welcome to 2026. How's it going, guys? And I just realized that I haven't allowed Seth into the chat.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Here he is.
Am I going to play Seth right now?
I said here he is, but I haven't allowed him in. 1 second. There he is. Welcome. How are we doing?
Howdy. Me and Guy look similar enough. I feel like he could be me. We got the fancy mic set up.
We can pull it off.
Similar headphones. We both have beards. Like, I don't know. It could work.
There you go. You've got your next time you want to go on holiday, Seth, you've got your stand-in.
Exactly.
Max, are you well?
Very well, mate. Very well. Enjoying my coffee from my new coffee machine. So never been better.
Still a decaf, I hope.
No. I'm. It's creeping up 2 a day now.
I knew you would.
My laziness has me drinking Fiat Starbucks today.
It's all right from time to time. No, I got this new coffee machine for Christmas, so I'm a happy boy.
Espresso or coffee?
It's Q knows more about the machine than me, but it does espresso. Nice. It does everything. It does all this stuff.
I'm very, very jealous. But check the tapes, listeners. On the last Bitcoin brief, I did call that this was going to happen, that the caffeine would slowly start to creep back in. And here we are, 9 days into 2026, and he's already capitulated. So
you're a wise old robot.
I'll take the victory lap on that one. Anyway. Welcome back to Freedom Tech Friday, everybody. Welcome to 2026. Hope you had a good Christmas break. I know I did. It's filled with lots of merriment, family times, and probably a little bit too much alcohol, but here we are. Today, we are diving into something a little bit different, a technology that can potentially allow us to build apps that work without central servers, no cloud, no accounts, and no middlemen. Hole Punch and Pear are the stack that bring apps like Keat and PearPass to life. To guide us through this new, frontier, we've got none other than Guy Swann, host of the excellent Bitcoin Audible podcast, and the most vocal advocate that I'm aware of the kind of Hole Punch / Pear and Keat ecosystem. So, Guy, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you with us. How are you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on, man.
Good. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. But just to quickly set the scene. Other than being an advocate for the all of the aforementioned stuff that we're going to dive into, do you have any actual like working relationship with the guys?
Sort of. I've been like kind of, I guess you could say, part of all of their groups and conversations and stuff for 2 and some change years now. And I hope to be able to show them Pear Drive when we kind of get that to a state that I think it's that I would be confident enough to say, listen, if you would like to invest. I think I have a very serious project that's, built on the Pear stack. But other than that, not really. Like we did the Pear report, and like I had them on a couple of times when I had that show running for a short period. But I was spread myself too thin. So I all my ancillary or secondary shows, I just kind of cut them. But which I still talk about the Pears stack on the show all the time. It's just not the Pear report anymore. So no, not really, but I do work with them and talk with them all the time. They have invited me to speak at the Plan B conferences, which, is that whole crew, it's Tether, and then they help fund a bunch of the development on this. So yeah, that's weird answer, but not really, but yes.
That's fine. I just wanted to clarify because obviously, like I said,
I'm not getting paid by, I don't have like a salary from them or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. And I definitely want to dive into Pair Drive later in the show once we've kind of set the scene a little bit. But I guess to kind of get us started, what problem is the kind of hole punch ecosystem trying to solve? Like, why does it even exist in the first place?
I think about this a lot, and I think it really just boils down to censorship. Like privacy and surveillance and, control over your media and stuff all come with that. But it's really kind of like you have to solve those problems to ensure you can't be censored. And so like if I wanted to put like one thing on it, it's about changing the structure of how we deal with data and how we connect and how we identify each other in such a way that we are the ones who control the network, the content, and the connection, and not someone else, because we have found ourselves in a place where the internet does the opposite of that, and that was never the intention.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a very a topic that's very tangential to Bitcoin in its values and in its properties. And again, we're going to dive into those. But yeah, from my kind of early research, like this week in building up for the show, it seems to be kind of removing middlemen, reducing the risk of centralization and censorship. So yeah, again, just very tangential to Bitcoin. So I guess let's just dive right in. Like at a high level, like what is Hole Punch? Is it a company? Is it a protocol suite? Is it kind of a philosophy? Like, because that was something that kind of confused me, because there's lots of names and things that are all used in the same sort of conversation. I got a little bit confused with like Hole Punch, Pair, Key, like
the naming convention is bonkers. Yes. And it's because it's a very, very long established project, or a very long project. It's like 12 years old or 11 years old or something like that. And it's gone through many iterations to get to where it is today. And it started out with an entirely different name and kind of intention of how it was going to be sold or positioned for, users. And so it was the hyper stack back then. So there's like hypercore, hyperdrive, hyper-B, hyperswarm, like all of these different things. But really what it is it's a protocol stack. It's a networking protocol stack. So rather than like one simple piece of networking, it's like, okay, how do you deal with sending information out in a distributed way? And how do you deal with conflicts? How do you deal with ordering of that information? How do you deal with establishing and holding intermittent connections? Like, how do I connect it? Like, if we're all three of us are connected, how do I establish that if I lose connection to one, that the stream doesn't drop? Like there's like a bunch of different primitives that have to be sorted out to make this work reliably. But I honestly think this was kind of like the whole concept of the internet, right? Like that's what TCP, the internet itself, is just how do you make a reliable network on unreliable hardware? Is because centralized is the opposite of that. Is how do you have one thing, and if that thing goes down, then everybody loses their connections. The internet was intended to be the solution to that. And this is basically taking it to a new level. And now it's basically referred to as the Pear stack. I like that better. I think it's a much better way to refer to it, and that's how I refer to it. Hole Punch itself is both a method. It's an idea of like how this is possible, but then it's also a company. It's also the company that's doing all of the development. So they are Hole Punch Inc., I think. And I think sometimes they refer to the set of tools that they have developed as like the Hole Punch stack or something like that. But I think it's easier to just think of it as like the Pear stack, which is a set of protocols, and Hole Punch, the company. That's how I think about it.
It's not
Okay.
a true Bitcoiner created tool if it doesn't have a lot of confusing names that no one can keep up
Exactly.
with. It's
Exactly.
like
They
if you
really-
don't do that, you've gone wrong somewhere. So
All right, so I appreciate that one. That makes it much clearer for me. So we've kind of used the term like decentralized network, and like obviously I'm immediately drawn to the analogy of, okay, well, how does this compare to the Bitcoin network, which is a decentralized network that we're all very familiar with on Freedom Tech Friday. Like, what analogies can we draw between the two types of network? Are they similar, or is that kind of in name only? I want to kind of clarify that before we dive into kind of the building blocks of what actually makes this work, because it almost seems like it's too good to be true, right?
Yeah. So, in the context of like, I think it makes much more sense to compare it to BitTorrent, because Bitcoin is the BitTorrent of money, really. But there is one thing that Bitcoin has that decentralization generally doesn't need, and it's a global consensus. And in fact, oftentimes you don't want global consensus on everything. There's a lot of drawbacks, and there's an enormous organizational problem or coordination problem when you have to have everybody understand the same state of a thing. This is exactly why Bitcoin is so restrictive in its use case and its scope, is because the consensus problem is so unbelievably difficult that as soon as you let it do too much and let it grow too big, the consensus itself breaks down. The reason that consensus is valuable breaks down. So in the context of general decentralization, you don't have consensus over the BitTorrent network, right? When you're like file sharing, you have like 20 people over here sharing this movie, and you have 2,000 people over here sharing this other file, a podcast, or whatever it is. Doesn't really matter. It's just a data distribution network, and they don't have to care what the other people are doing, and everybody else can go offline, and all their stuff still works. This is much more like BitTorrent in that way. Whereas BitTorrent also just had an enormous amount of drawbacks. Like there was huge benefits, but it was also very dated. It was super clunky. There were a lot of restrictions in how you could do stuff. As soon as you, quote unquote, made a torrent for data, for a piece of data, it was trapped. Like you couldn't do anything with it. Like if everybody, like let's say, for instance, like if I had like my podcast and I publish my feed or whatever as a torrent. Well, as soon as I want to add another episode, that old torrent doesn't work anymore. Like I have to break it and make a whole new one to add a new episode to it. And now if I had 10,000 people who were downloading and listening and seeding that podcast to other people, well, they're all gone now. I just started the torrent over, and I have to go find those 10,000 people again and get them to reconnect to me. And so the alternative would be I have to make a torrent for every single episode, but then I have to figure out how to get it to them. And I don't have a torrent. Like the network is too fragmented and kind of isolated. So there was no update mechanism, so to speak. And so the idea of the pair stack is, if you built BitTorrent today and you actually wanted it to kind of have the capability of just doing everything that we're used to on the internet, have a website, update some stuff. Oh, I can change this file, and there's just a record of the file being changed. There's a new update. There's a new episode in this feed. There's new information about this profile from this individual. How would you do it? And so the stack, the quote unquote hyper stack, the protocol that they build, is basically a combination of like, okay, what would be the main primitives that you would need, and how would you solve each individual problem? And then you put them together like Lego blocks, and you can build an application that just kind of delivers a website, but it does it on the back end in a BitTorrent way, but on the front end, you can just make it feel like the web. So it's a way to basically solve the problem of the shortcuts we built to get here with the way the web and social and all of this stuff works, in a new stack that does it basically without the band-aids. Like we hacked it together. Let's fix it.
With the similarities with Bitcoin, on my little bit of reading with all of this stuff, I was reading up on Pears. I guess one thing that I would say is similar is like personal responsibility by not relying on these centralized servers, if you
Yeah.
don't back up or you don't have things on multiple devices, it seems as though you're fucked.
Yeah, for better or for worse, you are responsible. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very much like your keys, your data sort of thing.
Yeah.
However, it also has the benefit, like, and maybe we'll get into this in like a separate question or framing, but there's nothing like, there's a lot of like, oh, there are no servers, but there's no reason that this has to shun servers. It's really just there's no centralization by default. So, but you can easily leverage it so that someone else has a backup of your stuff, and you can build it so you can pay for it just like you would on the normal web. You just don't have all of these enormous frictions that you would otherwise have around doing that, or the difficulty in providing that service. Like, I mean, how many people really know how to set up a server and then host data storage for somebody else? Like the complexity and pain in the ass, and most everybody's just going to rent from AWS to then forward that service to some other user, because it's kind of a nightmare to do. I mean, it's very sort of low, but it ain't that low. And that is exactly why we have found ourselves on a whole bunch of centralized, well, one of many reasons we found ourselves on a whole bunch of centralized platforms today.
All right, I want to kind of, this is the question I've wanted the answer to the most about the whole stack, and it gravitates towards generally how does it work, right? Networking is probably my least favorite part of interacting with computers. I just don't understand it properly. With that said, I probably never spent.
I have a very love-hate relationship with it.
Yeah, indeed. Now, I know enough to be dangerous, right? I know that, connecting peer-to-peer over Tor is latent, but it's easy. There's no port forwarding and all that jargon. How does the pair stack kind of fix that without, I understand, needing Tor or any port forwarding? Like, how can my computer talk to your computer without all of the usual or traditional hurdles that we normally run up against when we try and do that sort of stuff?
Okay, so without getting too clunky about it or too in the weeds, it essentially does it very similarly to the way BitTorrent and just any general DHT, any general peer-to-peer network would. But even like, there's even things like Bitcoin, you are not a listening node unless you like port forward and you actually make it so that you are accessible on the web. And so that's still like a problem. If you think about it in the comparison to BitTorrent, is you have seeders and leechers. You have people who just download and you have people who upload. Well, most nodes on the Bitcoin network are just downloaders. They're downloaders and they're securing it for themselves, but they actually can't handle requests from other people because of this really frustrating networking issue. But essentially everybody in their home has like a really big, painful firewall. And it's like, okay, well, if I want to get through it, how do I get through it? And so the hole punch mechanism that they have built, the easy way is kind of, if we don't have like a broadcasted method of like, okay, this is the exact port we're using and nobody knows what port we're using, and there's 64,000 whatever ports, how could you make it so that we could agree on a port without communication, like without actually being able to identify exactly what the other one is using? And they take advantage of a fascinating little statistics trick called the birthday problem. And so have you ever heard the thing that, there's 365 days in a year, right? And so it's like, how many people do you need in a room for 2 people to have the exact same birthday? And the number is something like 29. I can't remember exactly what it is, but that seems crazy. That seems like very tiny in consideration to there's 365 days. And the reason is because you don't care what day it is. Like, you don't care if the birthday is January 1st. If you had one person that says this person is March 12th, how many people do you need in a room to have another person whose birthday is March 12th? Well, you need like, what's half of 360, 150, 180 something, 182. And so, but if you don't care if it's March 12th, if you don't care which person you're matching the birthday with, you only need like 29 or 30. And then there's going to be two people who have the same birthday on one of those 365 days. And so they do the same thing with ports. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna ping on random ports or common ports or whatever. And I'm going to look for your response on this one. And we're going to keep trying them until we just happen to have an attempted handshake over the same one. And then we're going to essentially allow a cross through that port. And then boom, you can establish connection. And shockingly, you can actually do that. Even though there's 64,000 ports on a computer or on a network, you can do this in just a couple seconds, like 1 or 2 seconds. It's very, very fast because computers are fast. And so they've basically created this method, and unless there are like insanely restrictive firewalls and like communication standards or whatever, there every once in a while there's like a super like VPN behind a VPN thing that like it's like you're not on a very friendly network. This is not going to work very well. But otherwise, it just connects. And it's kind of wild that it works that way, but it's not got the horrible latency of Tor because it's ClearNet. It is encrypted because you're actually identifying each other by your key. So it like all communication is literally through your public key. So it's like, sending a Bitcoin transaction is you don't have to worry that if they locked it to your key, you don't really, nobody else is going to get the Bitcoin. Same thing with the communication in the Pears stack. And it just works. It's fast, super responsive, and super quick. And it's kind of wild because not much does that on the internet.
And is that a one-time thing with each specific peer, like that kind of, where we choose random ports until we connect, and then once my computer's found Guy's computer, that's it. It's kind of locked in, or is that like a dynamic thing that repeats itself?
Unless you just don't get a response, like unless the IP address and stuff changes. But if you change the IP address, like I did testing with Pear Drive after we updated. I can't remember what the update was. That was driving me crazy. I think it was something with how we were using Hyper-V. But I was like, okay, like how do I make sure like I'm sorting out like local network changes and IP address changes. And like if you like, I would disconnect, have it stop in the middle of a file transfer, disconnect, log into my VPN, reconnect, boom, starts right back up where it left off. I disconnected. I literally shut my computer, opened it back up, reconnected, continued where it left off. Then I specifically renewed my lease with my router so that I had a new IP address, and I went from 172 to 248 or something like that. And boom, reconnected and picked up where it left off. So I don't know the intricacies of all the little details of how they have done this, and I think this would be the Hyperswarm part of it. I'm not even sure which networking piece this would be in. But their mechanism just works. It just works really, really well. And it just refreshes if you have a IP address change. But otherwise the data is saved and it just continues to try the old thing. Obviously to be efficient, like it wouldn't make sense to do the complicated part over and over again if the computer's still there.
Yeah, I think maybe something to compare it to for people who are familiar with Tailscale. I know under the hood it works differently than Tailscale, but a similar idea of allowing you to connect two devices peer-to-peer with NAT traversal in a way that has essentially no impact on speed. Like you said, you're not losing speed like you're doing a Tor connection or something, which I know a lot of people, especially in the past, have used Tor for this type of P2P app, which is good from the sense of it's very simple, but bad in the sense of the latency is just so bad comparatively to something like a Tailscale or a Hole Punch. So I think for those that are familiar with Tailscale, that's a good comparison as well, to think of it in a similar way, different under the hood, but similar way.
Yeah. It's basically Tailscale without like a server assisting in the connection. Yeah.
Yeah. No coordinator. Mm-hmm.
What does identity look like on the when we're using this stack? Like, do I have like a singular identity? Is it different across my different devices? Do I have anything to back up? Like, what does that look like for a user?
So, this is actually totally up to the user. So right now, the way it's done is every instance creates a new public key, but everything is public-private key pairs. Everything. But then the network itself, like they're referred to as topics, but essentially the group or I guess you can think about it like a live torrent that you're connecting to has its own like topic key, so you can access the network from a bunch of different devices, even though your devices have different keys, as long as you have key to the conversation, so to speak, online. And that can be public or just you privately hand it around to people so that they can join it. But everything is public private key pairs, and every device, like every instance that you boot this up, creates a new key pair. However, if you want a persistent kind of like global identity, you would create a key pair and then you would generate sub keys from that, which is also kind of a simple application that you could do in this whole stack. But you can basically create it however you want. So it's like you have public private key pairs. How do you want to manage this? Do you want to have a global identity? Well, you can build your app this way. Do you want to just have it where every device is just a device and everybody connects and we're just kind of handling things by the conversation keys? Well, then you don't have to do any of that. It's really just up to the builder, because the protocol is kind of agnostic to whether you want an identity or not. You have a public private key pair that can be an identity and is a device, or you can just refresh it on your device over and over and over again. It doesn't really matter. It's really just how do you build, what do you want to build with the app? Just like the web, like you can use a website without users. You can create one that has accounts, create one that doesn't. Everybody's anonymous, 4chan. So essentially you do the same thing here. It's up to the builder how they want to use the protocol. But if you want a global identity and you want basically a backup, you would basically have a seed phrase, just like you would with Bitcoin. And everything would be connected to that master key. And if the data was still available out there on other people's devices, like other conversations, and you put that master key back in, you would be reconnected to those conversations, re-download the messages, data, whatever it is.
Yeah, kind of circling back a little bit to the peer-to-peer approach. I think something that's always jumped out at me and I've always kind of wondered about, I don't necessarily always want my apps to be peer-to-peer. I actually am kind of a big fan of the end-to-end encrypted but centralized server infrastructure approach that Signal, Notesnook, Proton, etc., a lot of really good tools in the space use. And I think there's a lot of benefit of like leveraging the privacy and censorship resistance that you get from the end-to-end encryption with the centralized server infra that gives generally a better user experience. Like, why in the pair stack was it seen as necessary to go P2P only? Like, that is what we want to do. Like you said, I know you could build something that has some sort of server infra as well, but the whole approach from the ground up is built to be peer-to-peer. Like, why is that seen as necessary as opposed to centralized server infra that, because of the end-to-end encryption, because of the privacy that's built in, can't actually see anything and thus cannot perform any targeted censorship? Obviously, they can do just complete whitelist or blacklist censorship, but that's a whole nother side of things.
I think that's actually a misunderstanding because of how everybody like Math and crew and everybody who's building it talks about it, and basically how they kind of like philosophize on what their goal is and specifically how Keat is built and all of that stuff. But I think it's really much simpler, is that there's actually no centralized servers aren't shunned in this protocol. There's nothing wrong, but centralized servers are still totally possible. It's just that if you can build the entirely peer-to-peer version and the entirely blind forward and the entirely distributed data version, well, then you can just take the benefit of the centralized when the centralized provides a benefit. like from the context of like
Mhm.
Pair Drive is like, I have no problem with centralized servers either, as long as I am not subject to them.
Yeah.
You know, as long as I am not dependent on them and they don't own my data and they don't own my ID and they don't own my network connections, well, then centralized servers are great. They're just service providers, you know? Like imagine if somebody could facilitate your package going from A to B, but then they never actually owned the package. And if they tried to open it up and steal your stuff, your package just disappeared from them and you still had it and you could send it to somebody else. Well, then I don't really care who does it. And I don't care that it's centralized either because it's still mine. So like actually a really great way to think about it is Bitcoin. So when I use Phoenix Wallet or Nunchuck or whatever, I'm using a centralized service for my node, unless I connect my own personal node. I'm using Nunchuck's node to determine where my Bitcoin is and my transaction history and all of that stuff. And maybe I connect over Tor. We have like a private thing so that like I do that so that they don't know exactly what I'm requesting, or we use neutrino filters or whatever. But they're a centralized service and they're providing me with that service. But if I don't want to use them, I don't have to. They're just there to make it easy. Just like you said, it's a much better user experience if it just plugs in and it just works. Well, this is the exact same. Is you can build, and it still sometimes has a lot of drawbacks, and it's still much more difficult to do it this way. You can build totally distributed, totally peer-to-peer and everything, but you can also just have somebody set up a server and do the NAT traversal, and everybody connects to that from your service. But the big thing is that if you still build things as topics, you still have it so that the network connections and the keys, the identities are, you know, built into a hyperswarm. What you're doing is you're just helping to make sure that the network is always there. The data is always there. And if you go down, everybody can actually still connect. Everybody can actually still do the peer-to-peer way. Everybody can still get it the peer-to-peer way. And if not all the data is there because everybody was leveraging you, well, then some people lose their data. But until you come back online. But it's just centralized is totally possible. And that's how I think about it with Pair Drive, is that I would love everybody to be able to peer-to-peer sync and just easily connect and download stuff between their devices. But there's also nothing wrong with Pair Drive or you or anybody else putting up 16 terabytes on the network and saying, can I pay you, or can you pay me, if you want to pay me $2 in Bitcoin or whatever, I'll let you have 100 gigabytes on my computer. And I'll offer it as a centralized service. That there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. So
yeah, it's super helpful to realize that it can be a mix and match thing. And I think especially your point at the beginning of like having the option and the functionality already built out to go the hardcore peer-to-peer only way gives a lot of freedom to developers and users to choose like what's best for you. If you are super hardcore and you never want to touch a central server and you can choose not to, that's pretty awesome. And if you want the best user experience and you're willing to sacrifice something for that, you could use the central server infra that someone is providing. It's a good way to think about it. And I had not realized that from the way I've heard people talk about this stack before. It's helpful.
It's definitely confusing because I think the diehards, the philosophical diehards, don't want to sell it in this like it's all peer-to-peer and it's all decentralized and everything's distributed. But it's like there's no reason for that. Like the benefit is that like now you can just host something with NAT traversal and easy connection. And like I do it all the time. I'm doing it right now. I host a few services on my Linux that are totally centralized, and I have all my other devices connect to them and use them. I do like a bunch of AI stuff. I do an LLM because that thing's got like a hell of a GPU that my other devices don't have. And I just log in and use it. And I do it over wholesale, which is tail scale, but the pair version. And that's it. It's a centralized server that I'm just hosting myself, but I could let you log into it too. I could just give you my key and you could log into Olama on my computer. And you could just use it to, chat GPT, whatever you wanted. But I don't want you to do that because I'm using my GPU, but, but yeah, it could be centralized or whatever. It's totally up to you.
Nice. We've talked a lot of protocol stuff. I want to kind of bring it to life from a user's perspective. We've kind of danced around the fact of, there's some popular apps that have emerged built upon the Pear stack. The most popular among which would obviously be Keep, the messenger app. We've also got Pear Pass and Pear Drive, which I want to dive into as well. With Keep, like we've kind of spelled out the obvious that there's no centralized servers. It's peer to peer. I presume it's encrypted. When I've been listening to other podcasts where you and some other guys have been chatting around, something that was interesting to me was around the unique scaling aspects that the Pear stack offers, particularly around like message rooms and file sharing and things like that. Could you maybe just dive in a little bit more and kind of put some meat on those bones for us as to like what the benefits are there?
Okay, so there's if you go the kind of like distributed data route and everything is a topic, so you can have it where, well, actually by default, when you create something, it's created as your key, and so like you're the owner, and then you can constantly update it. It's very much like a feed. Like when you subscribe to a podcast feed, like in Spotify or whatever, you can't edit the Spotify podcast. You can't edit the podcast feed. And if somebody else connects to it, they're seeing the exact same thing. It's owned by the host, right? It's owned by the person who made the feed. And then you can connect to a whole bunch of different feeds and you can do whatever you want. And those feeds can go wherever you want. You can do them through Apple Podcast app. You can do them through Castbox. You can do them through Fountain. You can do it through Spotify. Doesn't matter. It's the same feed everywhere. Those are just windows into looking at them. Well, Pear stack works very similar to this conceptually. And but there is an issue is if your host goes down wherever you are keeping it on the internet, like mine is Castos right now. If Castos went down, my podcast would be gone. Even though people listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Fountain, Spotify, Castbox, whatever, the source is down. And what's funny is that like tons of those people, you download the episode, like it's there on your phone to listen to. Like it might be on 20,000 different devices, but because the central place is gone, the whole thing is nobody else can download it. And then there is the hug of death. You have a website on a really small website, like a blog, and like you have an article that just like boom, it hits home, it goes viral. You got a DigitalOcean smallest droplet that you can afford at $10 a month or something, and 1 million people go to your website trying to read your article, and the thing's down after the first 10,000 try to connect. It's just dead, and you're scrambling. You're like, how do I spend $800 from AWS to get a bigger server? Oh my God, this is such bullshit. And everybody who wants, while your content is in its height and it is most desirable and everybody wants to see it because it's news, nobody can get to it. It's dead in the water and you're scrambling to try to keep it back up. Those two things are problems of centralization, specific, like just because of the architecture of how the data is built, and it's horribly inefficient, it's horribly fragile. If my podcast goes down in the Pear sense, everybody has joined a topic. If I, as my host, go offline or Castos goes offline, it's still out there on 20,000 different devices. And if you can't connect to me, it just connects to somebody else and downloads from them. So somebody else listening to the podcast will feed the podcast to you. Like it just like BitTorrent, right? If 10 seeders go offline, but there's still 900 seeders left, you just download it from somebody else. And because of this, the scaling properties are incredible, especially for something like just a simple website with an article. If 1 million people are trying to download it, that's fantastic for your up time. That just means that it's in 1 million different places and 1 million people are providing it. Your website, your tool, your whatever gets faster and more responsive, and it's easier to download. Like a movie with 10,000 seeders is like the best thing ever. It's like, because now I know I'm going to get it at insane speeds and I'm going to be able to watch it live if I want to. But if there's only 3 seeders, well, then now we're all bottlenecking on just those couple of computers trying to download the movie. But every new person that gets it makes it faster. So this is actually utilizing the beautiful nature of the internet and how great it is, in a way that's self-reinforcing. So popular content is just more available, and it doesn't cost you. Like I don't have to figure out how to get like an AWS server to handle 1 million users. In fact, I don't even have to be online. I can literally go to sleep, cut off my computers and everything, and the content can live by itself. But the big thing is that, like, especially what I think the right target is for something like PearDrive is startup costs, man. Like you think of like a Nostr client or whatever. Like some people are hosting these relays and $1,000 a month just in traffic on a small network. Like Nostr is awesome, but 100,000 users, daily active users or whatever, that's not a big network. That is not much. And this is eating into the ability for people to run nodes or run relays. That's a huge problem. Startups can't afford that, especially in today's environment. Well, what if you could just host something? What if you could do something with 0 server costs? I mean, other than just like having something online at your house or something. Like I used I think it was one of Callie's. Crap, I don't remember. It was somebody was hosting like a Lightning service, and they were literally doing it from like a dual like Raspberry Pi thing in their home. And like I used it was like a tipping service that I used for like a year. And like you could literally do that with any service or tool or data, and you don't actually have to handle all of the users. The users can help the other users in a peer-to-peer way. And I think that's just incredibly powerful. Like you could make a game where you don't have to have like a game platform. You don't like that's one of the things we're attempting to do with the PearDrive core engine, just to show like the breadth of what you can do with it. That'll probably be the first thing that we build with it, just because I think when people hear like, oh, file sharing or file syncing, they're like, oh, it's definitely just another Nextcloud. It's like, well, that's what it looks like if you don't think about what you could actually do with this thing. File sharing and data syncing is the internet. Like it's everything.
Can you dive in a little bit to PearDrive?
Sure.
Like, I understand the sort of the basics of like these are almost like applications being built on a hole punch network or protocol, but how do these differ from what else is out there?
Okay, so the idea really is for all these various tools, like ours isn't really different. We're just I'm just trying to tackle a very specific problem in a very targeted way, and I hope I do it well. But the idea is like Keat specifically is a chat app, right? And one of the things that I feel like I have felt like for a long time, they should have just done file syncing first, because a chat app is 10,000 times harder to get right and to get all of the organization and the ordering of the conversations and stuff. There's way more involved. Whereas I felt like the lowest hanging fruit was get files to sync between my devices. And so that's what we've been focusing on. And it's utterly simple. Like, how difficult is it to move files that are, in more than 10 megabytes from one device to another? Especially if they're not on the same platform, right? Is that sometimes I get the benefit of Apple iCloud or AirDrop, but I swear to God, that shit works half the time. It breaks as often as it works. And it's like Bluetooth. Like I swear to God, yesterday I tried to move a video from my phone, because I still don't have PearDrive on my phone. But I tried to move it from my phone to my MacBook, and there it is. I select it, and it does this little spinny wheel, and it says can't connect to device. It's like, why? Fucking why? I don't get it. It drives me crazy. Like this has literally been the bane of my existence. I have so many data from one computer to another. I lost a whole day yesterday because I ran out of space on my computer again. You deal with a lot of media, everything's 20 gigabytes. It's just a pain in my ass. But PearDrive is like, how could you make stuff seamless across devices, and how can you leverage that device that has a lot of storage to get the most out of the device that has a little storage. And iCloud really tries to do that, but it does it in such an annoying way, and in such a frustrating way, and in an unreliable way, and in a totally centralized way, which I don't like either. So Pear Drive is like, how do you fix that? How do you make it so that when I boot something up and I got all my photos, it just syncs to my Linux. Like if I just have it open, it's putting it on my Linux machine. And if I delete anything from my phone or my MacBook, I still see it. I still see the thumbnail, and I still connect to my Linux to bring it up, and I can even play it directly off of my Linux machine. And if I want it locally to edit with or to share with somebody or whatever, I just hit download. But like, how could you actually make that experience just feel like, make it visually aware of where the data is, and make it feel like the data just exists everywhere at once? That's what we're trying to do. But then in addition is that if I add you as a friend, you can't, I can't send a 1 gigabyte movie file. We recorded a Hodl Up
Can on Telegram
the other night. It'll be super compressed if it's a video. But and it's also like, again, if Telegram goes down, or Telegram decides that, everybody knows the story of the Telegram founder and what happened with him, being arrested for, letting people have private conversations. So I guess he's not arrested now because we are still having private conversations. Probably not. But again, you're dependent on a centralized platform. But if I just want to share, we go on a trip together. It's like, Christmas 2025, and like I just scan a QR and I add my family, and all my family are my friends or whatever, and it's like a group text. It's like, why can't we just group photo share? Why can't we just group share stuff on my Linux machine? Why can't I group host a service? And like, there's this like huge gap in how the internet works, and file sharing. There's this like big black space where like file sharing doesn't work. And there is also this mode of interaction where everything is social, or everything is like publicly social, or everything is like super just direct. And there's this whole missing piece, I feel like, of just file sharing. I can't tell how many times I'm trying to get stuff to my designer or my producer or whatever, and I'm like, okay, we'll try to do it on Mega, we'll try to do it on iCloud or whatever, and it's just scattered. It's just a mess, and it constantly is. I have to upload it, and then he's like, there's nothing in the folder. It's like, it's still uploading. Give it 10 minutes, because everything's bottlenecked by the 10,000 other people using their servers right now, and then they have to download it. But like, what if he could just look at it on my we connect directly, and the fact that it's on my computer is his access to it?
Would that? I'm very, very non-technical, so this might be a stupid question, but when you're talking about this file sharing between friends or people that you're working with, let's say that I shared a video with you, you're in a group chat, and it's one of my podcast videos or something like that. And then I get mugged. I go to London, so obviously I get mugged. And then I lose my phone, I lose my laptop, and they're the two devices that I had that content on, and I have no backups. Does that mean that now that I've shared it with you, you have it on your device because you've downloaded it, and therefore I could get it back?
Yes. Yeah. If somebody has the content still, like if you shared it with me and I downloaded it, well, then when you booted yours back up, I could just give you the key that you gave me back, and you could connect right back to it and then get it back from me. So like, if you had a third of the information, I had a third of the information, and Seth had a third of the information, and one of us, lost one of our backups or whatever, like, we can still boot back up, and all the information is there, even though none of us has the none of us has the full amount, right? But between the three of us, we have the full amount.
Okay.
And that's just as long as you have the key, or as long as somebody can still give you the key. So in like a network situation, I can just give you the key. But if it's an encrypted thing, obviously I could give you the encrypted blobs. But if you lost the decryption key, we're both screwed.
Okay, so in an ideal world, like if someone's running this and relying on this for everything, if this thing builds out, you'd maybe consider like you'd have like a home server, and then you'd have your other, like your phone, your laptop, whatever, your other devices, and you're storing most of your stuff on your server. But if that went down, and God forbid your other devices went as well, you could most likely get a lot of the content back anyway without relying on like an iCloud or one of these things. Oh, that's pretty cool. I like
Exactly. But then in addition, you could also just wrap an iCloud like service into it as well, where you could just say back up everything that's on my server, and you could do it in a specifically blind way where it's just an encrypted blob on their computer. All they know is that there's 180 gigabytes here. They have no idea what it is. They have a key that gives them access to the not the content, but just to the communication layer. And so they have it backed up. And if I lose my server, I can still just have a network backup, and all my other devices can boot back up, decrypt it, look at it, and it's like nothing happened. But that's a service. That would be a centralized service that you would do in addition to the fact that you could just have a home server that held it all. And you can also have your brother host a home server. And like I intend to, when I get my full on thing set up, my brother's going to host a copy in a different country, and I'm going to send him hard drives if I have to. And we're just going to have it in 2 different places, and we'll host it ourselves, and I'll have his backup and he'll have mine. Why not? We trust each other. He would be in my friends and contacts list. Why would you not leverage other people in your friends to have a backup for free? Tit for tat. I back up yours, you back up mine.
Yeah. Definitely love that concept. I think one thing I want to kind of circle back to, I know Q has a couple quick listener questions that we can answer as well, but like for the person who is wanting to use this stuff today, like how close are we to this being a boring, it just works everyday thing for a normal person? I know a lot of it we can kind of get stuck in theory, but I'm curious like where the state of the actual end user apps are today in the Pears stack.
There's still friction. Key works exceptionally well, but they change and update stuff so much that it's got a bug every once in a while. Like one of my rooms yesterday, just like stopped loading. There was like some sort of a rendering bug, and then like I hit math up or whatever, and he was like, "Oh, I think we found it," and they pushed an update like within an hour or 2 hours or something, and it was back up and running. But they are doing stuff a lot, and because of that, it gets a little bit buggy. But I'm constantly shocked. I use this as my daily driver. Like this is like my main work thing. Like all my business stuff, all my work chats and everything, and then tons of obviously of just like fun chats, like the Dank Bank, our meme group, is on Keyed. And this is my main one that's not, Twitter or Telegram. Twitter, Telegram, and Key are it. So it's, in my opinion, it's ready, aside from the fact that all of the end user tools haven't been built. The protocol is ready. The protocol is user friendly. Like PearDrive would be user friendly if this just wasn't like a huge mess of realizing we built it kind of wrong, and then rebuilding it again, and then realizing there was something at the bottom that should have built first, and then built the other stuff on top of it, and then rebuilding it again. Like this has been the process of it's a little confusing when you first work with it. It's got a lot of different moving pieces, and if you don't realize which Lego blocks should be on the bottom, you figure it out when you're halfway done with your tower, and then you're like, oh, son of a bitch, and you have to start over. So that's been the story of PearDrive. And also realizing there's some oddities in how it treats things. Like when you share a file into the network, like as a hyperdrive, your computer actually makes a complete copy of it into what's called a core store, so that the files are ready to be delivered. But that means that you lose, if you want to share 100 gigabytes worth of stuff, it takes up 200 gigabytes worth of space. And that was basically a non-starter for us when we were trying to figure out how to do this. So again, we built it the first way, and then we realized that that's how it works. And then we're like, okay, we have to rebuild it again. And we have to come up with a new method. So now what we've got is there's a hyperblob system essentially. So we use the network to create a communication layer, and then we send around, we sync a list, just the list, and then and identify everything by hashes, just like BitTorrent does. So you can have a name, you can name your movie Matrix 1999 or whatever, and mine could be the Matrix.mp4, but it doesn't really matter. We know it's the same file. We can do whatever we want locally, different. When we're syncing that, rather than creating an entire core store for the file to sync, we actually create an empty, quote unquote, hyperblobs like package. And then I just start feeding pieces into it, and you download the pieces. So that we've essentially eliminated a very frustrating and difficult problem. But again, we've had to rebuild this thing 4 times, I think. I think this would be the 5th, maybe. I don't know. But there's still some things to do to get the user experience of PearDrive where I want it, and I have high standards because I hate shit that doesn't work. But when I am even in the messy, kind of clunky state that it is right now, I'm using the proof of concept version, which is a command line tool. But yesterday, when I was dumping stuff from my MacBook, I moved it with PearDrive, because it's just the easiest way to move 60 gigabytes from one computer to another right now. So it's getting there. It's just been a very, very painful and expensive process to find out how not to build it.
Yeah, things are a lot simpler when it's centralized and doing things in a more normal, more common way. But that doesn't mean it's not the right approach. So we'll definitely
and
be
also
specifically
closely when 100,000 people have already built a version of it, and you can just kind of do it the way they did it. This is fresh, right?
Mhm.
Like Keat has just been built, and Keat's not even fully open sourced. All the base and like protocol and everything is open source, but kind of the front facing and how they organize and align things is not. Like the front app is not open source. PearPass is fully open source, but it's been out for like 2 weeks or something like that. And WhereFam is open source, but it's also been out like a week. Like there's just not any examples. So we're going by docs and stuff. And so, like, you know, when you're the first one in the woods, you have to hack a lot of weeds.
Oh, yeah.
And cut down trees. And that's really kind of the big problem. But after you've got like 10 good apps built on this, I think it's going to be so much easier. And one of the core things with PearDrive is our PearDrive engine or PearDrive core is going to be a simple import and then have a basic like web RPC type interface, so that, oh, you want to do something with files? Well, here's kind of your primitives and just use the commands. We want amateur developers doing very simple things to just not have to think about the peer-to-peer stuff at all. And so there's 2 pieces of this. There's the app, and then there's the core. And we are trying to make the core so that other people can build stuff with PearDrive and not have to think about the shit at all. So that's also a reason why we have to build it very, very specifically, and we have to keep rebuilding it when something isn't right, because it doesn't. We could band-aid it and just make the app work, but we can't do that and then offer it to other people to build, and then they'd be like, why is this super weird thing happening, or these extra resources being used? It's like, yeah, sure, just modify core and do something else with it. No, that needs to be solid and reliable and very easy to understand. So hopefully we can be a very important part of making this incredibly user-friendly and easy to build with. That's a big part of the mission and why we spent so much time on it. So
awesome. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to getting my hands on it. We are at time. I do want to give you 2 very quick fire listener questions that were pre-submitted, and it's almost like you can see the back end show notes here because you've already kind of touched on both of them. But we have a quick question from Schrodinger on Noster, who asks about the open source nature of the code. I know you briefly touched on it there, and I also want to caveat it by saying that you're only working on one app on this network, and you might not have any further information as to the kind of open source nature of like Keat, etc. But is there anything else you have to add on that one, or any alpha that you have?
It's just Keat. It's just Keat is not open source. Everything else is open source. So you know, if that's like a big thing for trust, which completely understandable, I would just wait. Granted, they've been on the we're going to open source it, and the reason when I talk to Matt or the crew or whatever, they basically say we're making so many breaking changes, and we want to kind of have primitives so that other people can build chat apps like Keat. And so their reasoning has been like, if we release something and then make a breaking change, none of this is compatible anymore. And now 20 people who built an app with it have to rebuild, have to retool. And so that's been, they don't feel Keat is done. It still says beta up in the top right. And I think that's what they're waiting on. But I mean, it's been quite a while. I wouldn't hold my breath. And maybe they don't open source it. I don't know. So if that's a big sticking point, then just don't worry about Keat. I think it's cool and it's great, but everything else is open source. PearDrive is going to be totally open source too. PearPass, which they've also built, is totally open source. WhereFam, I believe, is open source. Wholesale is totally open source. So there are open source examples now. Keat is literally the one that they're still working on that isn't. So
okay, cool. I'm glad you mentioned WhereFam, because the final listener submitted question from Tam Bam on Noster asked, when is WhereFam going to get an Android release, if you're aware of that? And maybe just a quick 30-second elevator pitch on what the hell WhereFam is as well would be useful.
Okay, so Find My is giant, centralized, and Apple has every data point on everywhere you've been, and that sucks. WhereFam is, let me just share my location directly with you, and please, granted, Apple can still track you if you're logged in and all that stuff, but I should just be able to control who sees my location. That's what WhereFam is, and it's dirt simple. It was actually part of a hackathon that they invited me to be one of the judges for, and I absolutely chose it as like oh shit, this is great. He was the winner of the hackathon. I can't remember what the reward was, but it's like, it's dumb simple. It's like, you should bring up a map, you share your friends, and then you can see where they are. You can, say turn it on and turn it off. And so like you're in a museum together and you want to split up, and it's like where you guys are. Very, very simple conceptually, very, very simple from an app. I have zero idea when an Android release is. I had been out of contact and I kept searching for it. It's like, because I literally, when he showed it to me in the hackathon, I was like, literally, dude, I will buy that. I will spend $5 and buy this app right now if this is available, because this is just cool and it's simple. I love single purpose apps. But it was not until very, very recently that it finally popped up. And I was like, hey, and downloaded it and got to mess with it for a minute yesterday. So Android, not a clue. Not a clue. I have not even talked to the guy since the hackathon.
All right. Okay. Well, Guy, this has been absolutely wonderful. We are a little bit over time. I just want to say thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. This has been very useful for me, and I'm sure for the listeners as well. It's been a great, albeit very, very fast hour. Thank you for joining us, Max, Seth. Thank you for welcoming us back into 2026, and for everybody to stopping by in the live chat. We've had a couple of boosts over on Noster, so thank you for everybody in the Zap.stream for sharing us with some sats. And thank you again, guys. And we will be back at the exact same time next week for more Freedom Tech Chat. Have a good one.
Good hanging out, dudes.
Bye.
Later, y'all.
Thank you for listening to Freedom Tech Friday. To everyone who boosted, asked questions, and participated in the show, we appreciate you all. Make sure to join us next week on Friday at 9 a.m. EST and 2 p.m. London. Thanks to Seth, Max, and Q for keeping it ungovernable. And thank you to CakeWallet, Foundation, and my NIM box for keeping the ungovernable misfits going. Make sure to check out ungovernablemisfits.com to see Mr. Crown's incredible skills and artwork. Listen to the other shows in the feed to hear Kareem's world-class editing skills. Thanks to Expatriotic for keeping us up to date with Boost's XMR chats and sending in topics. John, great name and great guy, never change and never stop keeping us up to date with mining news or continuing to grow the Meshtadel. Finally, a big thanks to the unsung hero, our Canadian overlord, Jordan, for trying to keep the ungovernable in check and for the endless work he puts in behind the scenes. We love you all. Stay ungovernable.